morning.
All right, so we wanted to start by talking about practicum.
Mm-hmm.
This practicum was really different for me because I went to two different groups because Joy, Naomi was absent on Monday, and so Joy asked me to go to it's Abby's group and help with that. So I had two drastically different groups.
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned that to you guys how different the two groups
Uh-huh.
are.
What grade were they?
They were 5th.
Okay.
And so the actual age level wasn't that different, but
the dynamic
was entirely different, especially having the group that we have where Lorena, you have Spanish.
Right.
And it was really interesting to watch this group where a child was the one who was translating. And so this child, this little boy, was constantly translating for these other little girls. I think there's might be 2 L1s in the class. Or there's could have been 2 different ones. There's definitely 1. There could be 2, but I think the second one might just not like speaking English as much. Because she would speak English pretty well too. She was pretty good at it. I just think she preferred Spanish, which was fine. Anyway, and it was so interesting to go from a group who's pretty mellow. Our group, I would say, is pretty darn mellow, and they're really ready to do whatever.
Yeah.
They're just we'll do that. Okay. They're willing to hop in, even though they're preteens. Which is surprising. But this group, it was really rough for them. And when I walked to the group, there was one little boy who was screaming, "Give me another group. I need another group. I don't want to be with this group anymore. Are you here to put me in another group? I hate these people." This is a 5th grader, and I was like, "Oh, okay." But I was able to manage him in such a way that he got computer time afterwards, so it's fine. But anyway, and then you guys got really close to Alfonso, didn't you?
Well, the lessons were really successful because I think we got to meet them where they were at, but also push them. And it was really interesting to hear some of our students ask really intentional questions. With my poetry lesson, they were very, intentional and kind of excited, but hesitant at the same time.
They wanted to make sure they were doing it right.
Right. They were like, is this right? And I had to reassure them, poetry is whatever you want it to be. And that's why we get to do it, is because as English language learners, we can have that freedom of learning in more of an artistic way. Just how focused they were on it, I was like, yes, this is great. This is their niche. And I think using the connection to music, we played music while we did it too.
Which was thank you. That was such a good idea.
Yeah. And they got to draw as they formed their poem in a different shape or pattern. And they were just really excited, and they made constant connections to the book. Seeing them having it open and referring to it was just really cool.
So glad we had enough for each of them. That worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
Also, I remember you had, because I wasn't there for your lesson, I remember you were teaching them different types of poetry, but did they all end up gravitating towards the shape?
At first they did, but then Carolina, she wanted every line to have one of them. And so she did an alliteration, but she asked questions is this right? How would I approach this? And then we would do comparisons this is sad. What else is something in your life that's sad, so you can compare it in your poem? And rhyming, she was really interested in what rhyming.
Because she's our L2.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Alfonso's our L1, Carolina's our L2, and Parallel's our L3.
Oh, okay.
So that's really interesting.
He was also, his art skills are amazing.
Yeah.
He is so artistically talented.
I remember when he was drawing for our getting to know you activity, and I was surprised at some of the things he did.
He's really good. And so I feel with the informal assessments we saw in chapter 4, for those students, they're going to work so well. Like the mind maps and the cultural puzzle pieces, anything that like they can use images to express their thoughts or feelings.
Maybe we should do the puzzle pieces in the
Yeah.
extension. I love that one.
But and then during Lorena's lesson, I mean, you can describe it too, but that one was really successful.
Yeah, I'm glad the videos played because
Yes.
I lost internet in there and the videos had loaded, so I was so happy they were able to play. And like they were two very different styles. Like one was Bamba.
Yeah.
And the next one was Drake.
I was gonna say, did you bring out some Drake?
Yeah, and we danced around the room, and I got kind of crazy with it because I wanted them to feel like I'm the nerdiest one in the room, and they weren't. You know, I wanted them to feel comfortable.
And I think it helped.
Yeah.
Like, it totally helped. They were laughing so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're quite, like, when I would go and talk to them, when I asked them a question, they were super engaged. And like, even you and Alfonso, like, you guys found a way to communicate.
And I would ask him I would open the book and point to things, like, what is this in Spanish? And he would tell me, and he got so excited to share that with me and kind of be the teacher. And then before he got on the bus, I was like, thanks, Alfonso, for teaching me Spanish today. And he was stoked. He was just so excited. So I think I'll continue that.
I love our students.
I know.
But such a different experience than what you had.
Yeah. Oh, man. It was really rough. First of all, I think that the environment that they're in is awful.
Their room?
They're in the cafeteria.
Oh.
And they're at these long tables. So there's just no way of, like, really sitting as a group. It's either you're on one side or the other, and it's hard to go around. And there was that, and then the kids just did not relate to the books that were brought.
Oh, okay.
And I almost think now, thinking about how important book choice is, because we got really lucky in that we found this book that is literally about immigration.
Yeah.
It's a wordless book about a child who was immigrated, and he kind of took the seed of hope with him, and it grew, and it was just like, and especially that metaphor, they all grasped onto that.
Totally.
But this group, the wordless books that were brought in were just something they just couldn't connect with, because they were just, it was like, oh, I'm going through a maze. I'm going through another maze. I'm going through another maze. It was almost like a maze book, if that makes sense. But it was not something that they could connect to. And I think that it would have been much more beneficial if we had talked about, like, types of wordless books that are out there, and maybe even given some sort of see more examples, or been given more resources, because we got lucky that we just stumbled upon this book online, and we like watched a video on it, and we were like, yes, this is a great video. This one will work really well for our group, especially being that they were upper level. We were like, yes. But this one, they just had a really hard time connecting to it. So I think that was part of the cause of their scatteredness. Like, they were just really not focused, and they were just kind of ready to just get things done and over with. And so, but when it came to my lesson, because I still taught the exact same lesson, which was the Facebook thing, so I still had those. And they really clicked with this idea of creating a character and using something that they do use. And they've all said, yeah, I have Facebook. I have Facebook. You have Facebook? Like, they were, like, really into that. Like,
don't find me.
I know, that's right. They would say that. And then one little girl was like, I got Snapchat, I got Twitter, I got all of them. And I was like, this was a little girl who pretended like she doesn't speak English, but I knew she was. Yeah. And that's when she was like, But they really connected with that, but it's still, they had a hard time focusing with it because it was still not a book. Like, they were creating a character from a book that they just did not connect anything with. And so that was really tough. But with Adrian, it was really fun because he and I created this sort of bond in a way. Like, when I started like, oh, well, maybe we can get you some computer time. Let's think about it. And suddenly it turned into this positive reinforcer where he was like, oh, okay, I have to change my attitude right now, or else I'm not gonna deserve my reward. And he was so respectful in that. And then he when I was like, okay, let's walk and ask if we can have computer time. Let's make sure this is okay. He walked right alongside me. He never ran away from me. He didn't try and go anywhere else. He stayed right next to me, was really respectful, wanted to know more about me. And then when we actually sat at the computer, you know, he and I got to talk and have conversation too. And then I was like, okay, well, you're going to be done at this exact time. And then the second the clock in the corner turned that exact time, he had already logged off.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that is such a sign of respect for me. And you really respect that I have given you this privilege, and you're not going to squander that by trying to get more time or anything like that.
And
so
extrinsic motivation is what works for him. And that you saw that happen. That's cool.
It's almost like love languages.
Yeah.
I don't want to transition there yet, but it is. It's almost like this sort of like what a motivator language. Like I think there's that's a type of language that there is out there, and that's his. So it worked out really well. It was great. I'm excited, but also really nervous for this next one.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm nervous.
I'm nervous. Really nervous. Just because getting them motivated to respond physically and get them going, I think
it's going to be tough.
But having you around, I think they feel that energy, and I think if we elevate it to a certain extent, then they're going to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Mind you, and those three are a little bit more receptive than the other three.
Oh, we should also mention that our group went from 6 or 7 down to 3, and there was the 3 or 4 girls that just didn't want to be there, didn't show up, which we were fine with because the group that we had this time was really pretty motivated to work, and even though it was after school, that was great. Yeah. But I'm a little nervous because I am still not entirely sure what TPR is, but we'll get there. Yeah. Anyway. Do we want to talk about the constantly changing culture of students?
Yes.
Move into that?
Yes.
You want to read what your quote now, or do you want to wait?
Yeah. Okay. So from the article, the linked article, the first one, the goals I found of it, mind you, it's full of goals. That produce students who can achieve academically, and that's our goal as teachers, like that's why we're teaching, but also to produce students who demonstrate cultural competence. So not only that they perceive themselves and understand who they are culturally, but also can respect and respond to others of different. So I think something that we forget is, I need to adhere to my students as they are and their culture, but we also have to be teaching them to be equally receptive to other people. And develop students who can both understand and critique the existing social order. So seeing the foundations of why we are the way we are and uprooting it and saying, F that, you know, I don't believe that. Yeah, exactly. I just think that's so powerful, and it's a huge overstatement of what it means to be an ELL teacher and any teacher. But something I also wrote about was limiting our language, as the article spoke of on page 95, I think, and how using certain terms kind of puts the ever-changing cultural identities of students in a box and says, okay, well, they're going to be changing, but only to a certain extent, or I need to be looking for a specific type of growth or change or cultural dynamic when there's all these influences from their home culture, from their establishment in the U.S. to culture that we're changing as Americans. And I think that there's so many influences that are coming in that it's unfair to essentialize, right? Essentialize? I always forget that term. And I think it also comes from laziness. Like teachers often, and that's harsh to say, I guess.
No, but it's true. I mean, I think there is something to the fact that ELLs have a harder time with teachers who aren't. With somebody who's trained in teaching ELL students.
I feel like laziness, and also like it's such a risk. Whatever you do with any kind of like cultural competence, it's like. It can go. It can totally go bad.
You don't know the boundary. Yeah, it's hard to find that balance. And then you also have to take into account, depending on the situation of teaching, how many different cultures or students you have from different backgrounds, and then making your words and your manner and how you act to appropriately fit all of them. I just think it's easy to say essentializing is easy to not do, but in reality, perceptions from the media, perceptions from what we know are so easy to just like dive into and just be comfortable there, I think. Yeah. And then did you guys, part of the question was specific ways to make sure that that doesn't happen in your classroom. Did you guys like think of anything that could help you, or maybe strategies you would use to make it so that you won't do that?
I said, instead of making assumptions about students, use students as resources to find out more about their identity.
Well, one of the in chapter 4, one of the things that the informal assessments was talking about was actually home visits for a little bit. And I think that's such an important way to get to know both the culture of the student that you're teaching as well as the family, and make sure that you're really understanding all facets of that student, because home is so important. And it's also important to know who's raising the child when basically I'm not. Because it could be grandma. It could be brother or sister. It could be that dad's away for work for most of the year or something like that. Like, I think it's so important to know the family dynamic and then the culture within that family dynamic of how that student is being raised to help you teach that student.
And what's crazy is, like, we automatically assume going to someone else's home of a different culture, it's going to be so different, or it's going to be a new experience. But if you think about it, going, like, my family, my parents have certain rules, like, we're allowed to drink and, you know, kind of use whatever language we want. But then going to my boyfriend's family's house, though we both come from the same culture, it's a totally different family dynamic. So you have to even see that layer within it, that it's not acceptable to do those things there. So there's minute details that are just like threads, you know.
And therefore, it's probably not okay to do those things in the classroom too. Like, it goes into that as well. Like, I just think that seeing how comfortable the family is, even having you there, can indicate how comfortable the child is being in a classroom setting. That was my biggest takeaway of how can we really come to understand and acknowledge and teach to a child's culture is by making sure that we understand exactly where they're coming from. And I think the best way to do that is visit them. And visit them at home if it's possible. And that's one thing that I'm always concerned about I mean, pretty much every teacher says no, but, like, is that too far? Is that overstepping a boundary? Like, I don't think it is, but, like, I think there's certain people who do think that there is.
And I think there's a procedure we would have to follow to make sure that it's, like, comfortable for everyone.
I remember in middle school, my middle school teacher had a home visit with me.
Oh, nice.
And I remember I wasn't nervous, but then my mom got all nervous, and she was like, "Oh, he's not going to understand me, or I don't know what to make him."
Gosh, I remember you telling me about this.
And then he came, and it was so fine. It was like he was talking to both me and my mom, and it was just fine. It was like, I don't know, it was really nice, and he didn't even stay for that long, and I remember for my mom, it was such a big deal that he ate her food, like what she had made.
That's so cool.
I don't know, I think it depends, like, which students you go to home visit. I don't think you would go every single student's home.
Or would you try? Because let's say I have 30 students. I'm doing math right now. But if I, like, went and visited maybe 3 each weekend at the beginning of the year, that would take me 10 weeks.
Yeah, I guess it's not. I mean, it could never do any harm, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it's beneficial. I think it's also beneficial. I just put raspberry around.
That's your done.
I think it's also beneficial for the student who does have the background culture to know that they're not being singled out.
Yeah. Even socioeconomic status. Like, I don't think I had the perception as a child in poverty. I mean, it was poverty, but anyway, different story. But I had a student in a practicum I did who was homeless. Like, he had pretty much nothing. And that is a culture in itself. Because it was just so amazing. I'll never forget this. I was there for student-teacher conference or parent-teacher conferences.
Oh, what practicum was this?
I think I was actually just volunteering, or it was one of the very first where we were there for a day, once a week, something early in the program. I was at Carl Kosher, and the mom and brother came in. Dad wasn't in the picture, and I was told that this student was homeless. Mind you, this boy was the sweetest kid on the planet. He was like so kind and smart, and his mom came in and was completely like enveloped in his education and was so she cared so much. She was like, anything I can do to make sure that he has what he needs. And I, maybe because I connected with that, because my mom was that way too, even amongst the financial burdens, you know, it was just crazy because you can assume that people who don't have a lot would be ashamed, but she was not ashamed at all. You know, she was very like, this is my situation, this is who I am, and this is where I'm at. I don't care what I think. Currently, yeah. And I don't care what people think. Yeah. This is what's important. And I don't know, I feel like that's not always the case. To be hesitant about those things, not just culturally and in terms of, you know, what we define as culture, but other aspects too. I was just the most powerful thing I've ever seen, I think. It's cool. Yeah. But there's so many like small details